Hi, Chris. Welcome to Awaken and Align.
Hi, Laura. Thanks so much for having me. It's such an honor to be with you.
It's such an honor, especially since we just spoke 2 weeks ago on your podcast, PS Younger Self.
I know. And then I was just mentioning to you how I just found you through Instagram, and we had such a great conversation on my podcast. And I just was looking forward to connecting with you again. So this is awesome.
This is amazing. I'm so excited to get into it. But I want to know your origin story first. Where did you grow up? What did you want to do? What were your dreams? What did you study?
Yeah, let me try to give you the abridged version, but I am Korean like you, but I was born in Korea and I came here with my parents here, not Portugal where I'm at right now, but we immigrated to the US when I was 1. So I grew up in LA and gosh, when I was younger, I had all sorts of random little girl dreams. I think at one time I wanted to be a pediatrician because I'm sure, like you and most Asians, we get this ingrained kind of expectation of what we should be when we grow up, like doctor, lawyer, or work for a big company. And even though I was like, I don't know if I want to be a doctor, but maybe at least if I work with kids. And then, gosh, and then I moved to the East Coast after grad school. And then now I'm an expat living in Portugal. And for the first time in my life, in a 15-year career, I feel like I'm living my life's purpose.
I love that. What was your 15-year career? What were you doing?
Yeah, it was in PR and then it evolved to social media and digital marketing.
Hmm. And
Mhm.
I'm sure you get this question a lot. What was the impetus for you to change gears into what you're doing now?
Wow. Yeah, I love that question. Um, Let me actually give you a story. It was in 2019 when I was coming back from a trip from Paris. I was in one of the yellow cabs uh, and going from JFK to my Williamsburg apartment, and I saw the New York City skyline. And Laura, like every other time I saw the New York City skyline in the 11 years I was in New York, I was so proud and in awe that I get to call this incredible adopted city my city. But that night, I was in a ball of tears in the cab ride home. And I had no idea what was happening to me, but I had this gut emotional reaction and felt that I wasn't supposed to be back in the United States. And I remembered in that moment that I had this 20-year dream and fixation to live in London.
Mm.
And I actually moved to New York from Boston because I couldn't figure out then how to move to London. So I realized if I'm having this reoccurring 20-year dream, Laura, that life is too short. And unfortunately, a year before, my cousin in Korea, he was only like 44 or something, died unexpectedly. And it was just a stark reminder that life is too short. I rather live my life pursuing my dreams than regretting never trying. So I vowed to myself that day, Laura, that I'm going to spend the next year figuring out how I'm going to move to London. And I did 1 year to the date. I quit my job. I was this close to securing a job because I was applying for all these sponsorships.
Mhm.
And Laura, that 1 year mark was coming. I was at the very end of talking to one agency, and then I just said, you know what? I just got to do it. I quit everything, sold everything, and moved to London with 3 suitcases.
That's-
Seriously, it
I'm
was
like,
quite
that's
a
something I would
liberating
do.
experience. Huh?
That's something I would do. Well, I did do that.
Where did you go?
Well, I think that's why we bonded because I shared with you on your podcast that I just quit my job in 2017 without a job. I was just like, I'm done. And
Yeah. Mhm.
I was like, no plan, but that's okay. What was in London? Like, what was it about London that made you literally change your life?
God, you know what? I've I've been asked that question so many times and I really don't know how to answer it, except for the fact that I may have been European in a past life or something. Like I've had this 20-year fixation with uh, Britain even before I stepped foot in Europe. And I think it was just the culture, the accent. I don't know, there was something about it. And I was supposed to do a study abroad in undergrad at Cambridge and then at grad school, all this stuff. And so it, these multiple attempts didn't happen. And then I just took that leap of faith, but I don't know how else to explain it, Laura. It was just like this fixation.
It was like you were pulled physically. You felt that gut instinct, that sign within
Yeah.
you that you said, and you didn't have like any kind of logic or reason around why this was going to work out. What was it about that feeling that was so different from maybe any other feeling you had felt that you trusted?
Hmm. I now can explain it because I've done some spiritual work and personal development work to explain to you that feeling was led by intuition and my heart versus logic and reasoning.
Yeah.
So up until that moment, because I have a very analytical mind too, and again, the our narrative that we've been told of what is expected of us, what's the definition of success, etc. So I was living in this culture scape, following this like expected path of success, including what was expected from my family, logic, reasoning, and all of that. And versus now I realize it was just that gut intuitive feeling that I was following. And I've learned now that is the biggest truth teller of the life that we can lead that is aligned with our destiny.
I love that. I told you that my emotional health right now is hanging on by a thread, so I might cry every now and then. No, because what
Be a
I made,
virtual hug.
I know. Well, I made a commitment to interview and meet more Asian American women this week, and I've already spoken to two of them. And what's so unique about all of our stories is that we basically had to go against our cultural expectations, our family, our collectivist mindset to be a little bit more American, if that makes sense, like to be more
Yeah.
entrepreneurial and to go out on our own. And with that, you get a lot of backlash. You get a lot of like, what is she doing? What's happening here?
Hmm.
And I'm sure you experienced that in some way because I did for sure.
Hmm.
What were you like telling yourself while you were going through this process? And if you had any backlash from your family members?
Yeah. Before I answer that, like I have to really acknowledge, and I'm inspired by you, Laura, how you said you're using this time and your platform to amplify other Asian voices. And it's really inspired me as well. And so just wanted to share that with you. In terms of how did I receive any backlash and, how did I deal with it? Most definitely from my family, 100%. Um, all my, best friends were cheering me on. So I didn't experience any, backlash or questioning there. But it was from my parents predominantly, and I don't blame them, but it was really hard, to be very honest, Laura, where they would say things to me like, you created such a good life in New York, you make good money, you have a good job, blah, blah, blah. Like, why are you, and you're, 'cause at the time, was I 40? I was 39. You're almost 40, like, why don't you just settle down and have an easy life? Like,
Mhm.
why do you keep wanting to like uproot yourself. And then it's not even like, and then my mom kept joking, like, cause I grew up in LA. She's like, you keep moving further and further away. And like, now you're going to move to a different country and a different continent. And the irony is that like, I immigrated here from Korea too, when I was little with them. So, but I know it all comes from just like motherly protectiveness. But I had to, at one point, I don't know if educate is the right word, but create boundaries also, and just try to tell my parents that, like, don't worry about me. I'm going to be okay, but I have to follow like what I want to do. Like, I just am not happy anymore. Not that I was miserable, but all this, good career and money and all this stuff like didn't matter to me. Like, I wanted to chase all of my dreams. And if I fail at it, at least I'm gonna try. And then London didn't work out because my visas didn't come through, etc. And then I'm like, well, I don't want to stay in the US. So I'm gonna figure out another way to get back to Europe. And then I decide on Portugal, and they're like, why are you moving to some poor country? I'm like, oh, you know what I'm saying? So it's their own narrative, it's their
Yeah.
own fear. And so it's a balancing act.
I love you're like my spirit animal. You're like my kind of people because you just
Mm,
literally know like you want to do something, nothing's going to stop you. If it doesn't work out, you pivot and you pick another country.
figure it out. Yeah.
You're like, this didn't work out. Okay, I'm going to go to Portugal, and I feel like okay, I feel though that is inherent to who you are. That is like part of your personality, your energy. But so I feel like no matter what, that is a core part of you. But what like advice can you give to people where, I feel a lot of people see these roadblocks and, if
Mm,
London doesn't happen, they're like, oh, well, I better go back to the United States. Like, what is your
mm,
advice for people to just like pivot? It seems like you're really
yeah.
good at that.
Well, thanks, Laura. I think, to your point and acknowledging, I think number one, it's just ingrained in me. However, I did have to develop it. So what I would tell, anyone else listening where they are, want to pursue something, but are afraid of pivoting or not sure what to do next. I think first and foremost, understand that fear is the biggest thing that holds us back.
Mhm.
And for me, I've learned that fear is a choice. Besides our biological fear of like scary things and death and all of that, like we have a choice every single day to choose to be in fear or take that chance and, learn from it, grow from it, rise above it, and figuring it out. And I try to tell people, just face it, like become like face to face with it,
Mhm.
and tell yourself it's going to be more of a growing journey to actually go through it and see yourself from the other side. And I think like the one last thing I'll say is that, Laura, like I think also I'm a very curious person. Like curiosity fuels me. So I can't stay stagnant. And it's this like fuel for curiosity that makes me want to figure it out
Mhm.
and pivot.
Mhm. So what does that look like? You said face your fears. So
Hmm.
when you didn't get your visa to stay in England and you're like, well, I don't want to go back to the United States. And so you're sitting, let's say you're sitting in your flat and you're drinking your tea. I'm totally stereotyping, by the way. And you're like, moving, you're like becoming friends with your fears because you're like,
Yeah.
oh, well, where am I going to go? And how am I going to make money? And how am I going to
Yep.
get into my dreams?
Yep.
And like, walk us through the process. Like, what are you telling yourself? Do you
Hmm.
get downloads? Like, how does this all unfold for you?
Yeah. So good question. So what I mean by like face your fear is actually like be with yourself and feel like and observe what like is going through your body, what thoughts are coming to your head, and then realize if if they're real, like if it's just something that's actually scary and life threatening or anything like that, or is it just your limiting thoughts?
Mhm.
And majority of the time it's your limiting thoughts. And once you recognize that, the next thing I say actually is to, because I'm very analytical and detail oriented, I actually plan out like backwards,
Mhm.
like how I'm going to take action on that next step, whether it's a pivot or not.
Mhm.
Even though it sounds kind of spontaneous, like in the background, I'm actually plotting my way backwards.
Mhm.
And it always works 100%, like 99% of the time for me. So for example, like when I told you that story of being in that cab ride home from Paris, and I vowed myself 1 year to the day. I actually pick that date in my head and write it down somewhere where I can visually see that date every single day. And maybe it's the marketer in me too. Like when you plan to launch a product, you pick a date and you plan backwards. So
Mhm.
then your active self is planning every detail, knowing that you have this date in mind that you put out into the universe.
Mhm.
And for me, it's always happened that by that date, because you put that energy and thought process into it, that I know we talked about this word manifest, you're basically creating it because
Mhm.
you're plotting it all out. And if you come to that date and you feel like you um, are not ready, another thing that I realize that holds us back is our perfection, like
Mhm.
analysis,
Mhm.
where we want perfection. So instead of like wanting that perfection, like know that it's perfect enough and just take that leap of faith.
I love that. I love it's like spontaneous, but
It's
kind of.
planned spontaneity.
Yeah, it's like, are you a Virgo? That sounds very Virgo, like planning out in detail, like the steps of your spontaneity.
I'm a sun Pisces, and then like I have like Libra signature. But it's so funny when my best friends like came to visit me in London. I planned an itinerary. I'm like, yeah, and I planned our spontaneity in there too. At like,
I
I know
kind
I'm a
of
bit
like
much.
that. I because I'm a spontaneous person, I really do need that like step by step action steps because then I
Mhm.
feel like too chaotic. Then I feel like I'm losing track of what I'm going towards.
Yeah.
So when you were sitting with your fear and you were analyzing, and I love the acronym FEAR is false evidence appearing real because
Mm-hmm,
it's
mm-hmm.
not real. And then you suddenly got this idea to go to Portugal. Was this all a part of the dream? What was the actual
Mm,
like destination that you wanted to go to?
yeah. So, Portugal was never in my vernacular until like a year and a half ago. I kid you not. Like, so no, it was not part of my dream and destination. Like London was it. But what I realized also is that even though I just explained to you in depth how much of a planner I am, that I've come to realize there's beauty in like happy, beautiful accidents.
Mhm.
And I love this quote that I now live by, and if I was into tattoos, I would get one. But it's Nietzsche's Stoic quote, "Amor fati," which basically means a love of fate. Like everything happens for a reason,
Mhm.
and that again, you have a choice to put meaning on what's happening to you, and turn it around for the positive. So, for example, like when I didn't get the two different visas I applied for, Laura, I'm going to be honest, I was devastated, and I also felt like a failure? You know, did I give up my very comfortable, good life in New York for a failed dream?
Mhm.
And then I had to go to California where my parents are, and then I thought I was going to be at an extended holiday, and then the pandemic happened. Next thing I know, I'm living at my parents' house for like almost a year during a pandemic, and like, Laura, I'm going to get real with you. No, I'm going to get real. I'm like, I'm almost 40. Did I just leave my life and career in New York to not make London happen? And like, what is going on? But 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 I knew I'm not a failure. I gotta figure something out. And then some crazy thing happened where like I was like, you know what? Everything happens for a reason. Maybe there's a reason that London didn't work out. And when I researched Portugal, etc., and then ironically, like I fell in love with a Portuguese man. While we're not no longer together, but like I and now I'm here and I'm so happy to be here, and it all makes sense because I'm
Mhm.
supposed to be here.
Yeah. Okay, so this is great foreshadowing for me because my nomadic journey ended last March when the panorama started, and I've been staying with my parents for a year now, and I had the same thought like, oh shit. Is this my destiny? But like, but now that things are getting better, quote unquote, and now my mind is going to the space of like, where do I want to go? Your story is giving me hope.
Oh, girl, I
Parents are getting way too comfortable with me because I'm like their IT person, their like technology person. I file their taxes and all this shit. And I'm like,
are they
excuse me.
wait, yeah, are they basically like now assuming you're going to be living with them forever? Because
Oh
that's
yeah.
what my uh-huh.
Oh yeah. My mom's like, I'll build a she shed for you in the backyard. I'm like, no, no, this is temporary.
Oh my God, I'm gonna get real with you. So again, I didn't think it would be almost a year I'll be living with my parents, but because psychologically I didn't want to think I even like moved in. All my three suitcases were in the laundry room, and my parents live in a big enough house where they had a spare bedroom. And my mom's like, "Oh, just unload your stuff and put it upstairs." I'm
Mhm.
like, "No, no, no, no. That's gonna make me think that I've like moved in." No,
Mhm.
I feel you.
Okay, I'm very comforted by your story. Um, so what is your ultimate dream? And like I love talking about dreams because I really feel that, and this might make people, feel a certain way when I say this, but I believe this to my core since I was a little girl, that the purpose of us all being here is actually to live our best lives, to live our dream lives, to be
Mhm.
happy, live with peace and joy. And
Mhm.
so everything in my life I do because I'm pursuing this dream life in my vision and my feelings. So what is yours? And you said you're living it. So do
Yeah.
tell, spill the tea.
Well, first of all, you're speaking my language. And again, like I just know this is why we connected on so many levels. And I'm a Pisces, as I mentioned. So I'm a like a lifelong dreamer, and I have lots of big dreams. I think we should all dream big. And I agree with you. Pursue and live life in pursuit of that dream. So while I'm living my dream in terms of having the luxury of living on my own terms, and that's kind of my motto with PS Younger Self, is that everyone should really pursue a life that is defined by their own definition of success, passion, purpose, dream on their terms and nobody else's expectation. And so while now I am living that lifestyle, I do have one really big dream, and I'm lucky to be on that path, is to grow my PS Younger Self community to inspire more people
Mhm.
to take that leap of faith, have confidence and courage and trust in themselves to live truly the way they want to live on their own terms too. And it, I never like, to be honest, podcasting was accident,
Mhm.
like wasn't happy accident for me. But now I realize that I now have this incredible opportunity to talk to amazing people like you, Laura, and it brings me not just so much joy, but I learn every single day. I get to talk to all these great minds, and my dream is to bring all those, great minds and thought leaders and wisdom to share with more people, and hopefully to pass it on to our younger generation, which is the whole premise of PS Younger Self. What's the wisdom that we can pass on to our younger self that maybe we didn't know then, so
Mhm.
that we can live life fully in the present and on our own terms.
I feel so good. I honestly think that's why getting older is so beautiful because,
Oh, I love that you said that.
oh, well, so I'm turning 39 on Saturday, so in 2 days. And a
Okay.
lot of people, and you're 40, right? You mentioned?
I just turned 41.
Yeah, so I feel that at this stage of our lives, we've
Yeah.
gone through a bit of life where we can speak from our own wisdom, our own experiences.
Mhm.
And I've never felt in my entire life until this point this confident in myself and more myself
Mhm.
than I was when I was a little girl. Because I think as children, we know exactly who we are. Like, I never wanted to be a doctor. I never wanted to go to an Ivy League school. I didn't fit the mold of what like Korean parents wanted you to be. I was super loud and like rambunctious and had so much energy, and I had this creative mind. And
Love that.
I feel like at this stage, I can finally be who I truly am because I just don't give a fuck anymore, like what anybody
Mhm.
thinks. And I think that only comes with age. How do you feel
Yes,
about this?
100%. And this is like, I love being around women like you who are so self-assured that also embraces their age. I was just having a conversation recently with a guy, and he was telling me how Portuguese women like are afraid of getting older or not so confident about getting like older. And he's Portuguese, he was so speaking about that. But I think just generally, society again creates that like stigma around women getting older, and like what does that mean? Or they have to be married by a certain age, and if they're not, they're an old maid or whatever, right? And I agree with you. Like for me, I've never felt so confident and
Yeah.
self-assured,
Yeah.
and all, yeah, and all of that, like I feel sexier because I don't, like you said, give a fuck. Like if you can't handle, like if you don't like me being 41, then like I don't care. I don't need to talk to you. So amen to that. And I tell like some of my girlfriends, um, who are around my age, and like some of them lie on their dating app or what. I was like, why, like why do you have to lie? Like I
Mhm.
think that's so cool. Like, yeah, I don't know. So I love being around women like you who just own it.
Yeah. Yeah, because the programming is, especially from a Korean family, is you have to get married, and which I find so ironic. I was actually saying this to my last guest, she's Korean as well, and we're told that we have to go to these like amazing colleges to become
Mm,
doctors and lawyers and make a lot of money, only to marry a rich guy to then be a wife and have kids and like throw all of that shit away. I was like,
yeah,
what kind of programming is that for women? And all the plastic surgery and altering of our faces, you're basically
scary.
erasing Asian women, right? Like the
Mm,
fact that just because I'm not married and I don't have kids, that I'm not worthy of being in this space.
yeah.
So I also really love that we're around the same age and we're doing doing like these podcasts and speaking out about what it means to be a powerful woman.
Exactly. And like, and because I'm sure other women and maybe not just generalizing, our Asian women, but just any woman who feel like they were being held up to a certain standard and expectation and didn't have the courage and confidence to, again, like just pursue what they really want to do and speak up. And I love that we can use these platforms to say that, you know what, like, it's okay. You don't have to follow everybody else's rule. It's more freaking fun and liberating to do and feel the way you want to feel. And Laura, like, I also realized that, oh, this is my purpose. When I got a DM from one of my listeners, and she's an Asian woman, and she said this to me. She's like, you're so inspiring, like as an Asian woman, because like in our society, like and by our parents, we're expected to, stay close to the family. We're expected to not be so outspoken. Like, how do you do it? And the fact that she's sharing that like sentiment, that we, women like us who can speak out, can inspire other women that it's okay and they have
Mhm.
the power to do so too, it's what's giving me strength and purpose.
Yeah. And what you were saying is the answer is it's not easy. It's not easy to go, I guess I call myself the unicorn, not the black sheep, because
I love
it is
it.
it is a little awkward, to be honest, when I mean it's not awkward for me anymore just because I'm super like secure in who I am, but for a while there, as I was shifting from my, corporate job and like molding into the person that I am now, and I wasn't sure of what I was doing, and I was super sensitive to the fact that I had, aunties and uncles being like, what are you doing with your life? Or,
Yeah,
you know, um,
yeah.
because I'm in my later 30s, and my 20-year-old cousins are getting married and having like children, and you're the only one that's not married with kids, and
Yep, that's me too.
you start to question like, why am I so different?
Yeah, but you know what I realized, Laura, that like they're just projecting their own insecurities, their own like perceived narrative of what's right or wrong
Right.
and expected, right? And so we can't hold it against them, while like, yeah, we can create those boundaries, like that's unwelcome, like I can do what I want. So but I totally feel you. And I think I've just learned that, especially because like, I don't know, like especially when I go visit like Korea and my Korean relatives, it's the the feeling of being an outcast,
Mhm.
definitely, for me, is a lot like sharper and bitter than like being here, like even around my parents and stuff,
Mhm.
because of, yeah, that expectation.
What you just said about them projecting their own fears onto me only came through my own spiritual and personal growth journey. And it
Mhm.
sounds like you went through the same journey of your own spiritual and self growth journey. So, how important was that in
Mm.
going on this path that you're on now?
So important, and I'm still going through that process, Laura. I think it's a constant process that will have to go to it. I want to go through, but it was so essential for me to not feel ashamed and not feel like an outcast and not feel enough. And I've learned that through this self-development work. One of my biggest limiting beliefs is that I'm not good enough, not good enough to be loved, not good enough to be accepted, etc. And so I had to learn that, to feel confident and self-assured that when I come face to face with everyone else's projection, it's like, okay, it's not about me. Like, yeah, because I'm okay now. I feel confident in myself now. I still have obviously some insecurities that I'm dealing with, but I'm in a much better place now and knowing where it comes from and being conscious. And also like now I know what triggers me, Laura. And when I can consciously recognize it, I also make a conscious effort to step away from it
Yeah.
and edit that thing or person or whatever that's triggering me.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think going through this journey, I'm super lucky because my parents are very progressive. Like they,
Mm,
you know, I've gone to therapy before. I've done all these like interesting healing things, but still my parents don't quite get it because they've never been through that process themselves. And like even this week I was telling you before we hit record that I've been going through some, yikes, like a lot of shedding of my old shit and also generational stuff, like ancestral
yeah.
stuff. And my mom was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I'm healing our generational thing of like poverty and lack and our like ancestor wounds." And she's like, "You're so weird."
I was just gonna say, does she understand that? Like, does she know what you're talking about? But I don't think so. She responded with that reaction.
You know, I think she tries her best to understand me, but she's a Christian woman, and I think her understanding of spirituality is rooted in that. And
Mm,
but the fact that she asked, so I told her the truth. And so during this journey, it can be quite lonely if you don't have people around you that support
yeah.
you and get you. And I listened to your latest podcast with your friend.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and it was so good because you said something that I've been feeling right now, which is like it's okay to let go of relationships that don't serve you, and it's all a part of our evolution. That like I've had friends since I was 6 years old, and they just don't get me now.
Yep.
So how have you been able to go through that part of your evolution?
Oh, yeah, that was thank you for listening. It wasn't easy because I'm also a very emotional person, and relationships where I build a bond with like mean a lot to me. But so when I realized that, okay, certain friendships, it was kind of it grew out of something that happened with a group of friends, and I was vacillating and between, oh, like, is this right? Like, should I be feeling this way? And then I felt guilty also, like if I choose not to talk to them anymore because I don't feel like this is right. And so it had to be a lot of just questioning and knowing, questioning myself, but in aligning with, like, does it align with my values of who I am? And then just being okay with the fact that, you know what, everything in our life, I think sadly, depending on how you look at it, like everything has an expiration date. And just because, I think also the stigma, like just because something has a history doesn't necessarily mean that it's we're supposed to take it into our present and our future. Like only take things into your present and future if it's serving you, if it's supporting you, and vice versa. And yeah, and to be honest, that episode, I wasn't sure if I should share it because it's not a typical format that I share. It was a candid conversation that I had with my very wise friend, and then I realized, you know what? I think this could help others who might be kind of questioning these thoughts too.
Yeah, what I took away from that and what I'm taking away from this conversation is that in order for us to get to our dream lives, our highest timelines, our destiny is first feel into the fear, like look at fear, ask yourself, is this real? Listen to your gut feeling, your gut instincts, go with it, pivot. When you see like a dead end, just ask yourself, well, maybe there is more to the story. Maybe I'm being redirected.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Not having attachments on certain relationships that aren't bringing you forward, right? and really investing. And you shared, it was a quote from Jim Rohn, you are the sum of the 5 people around you.
Yeah.
Like, it's Jim Rohn, it's Jim
Jim
Rohn.
Rohn, I'm like, I don't know who said it, but I know it exists, that quote. It's so true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was like chiming in, but I knew you couldn't hear me. Um, because also, like, when you surround yourself with people who are growth minded, it helps
Mm-hmm.
you get on that same, wavelength of thought. And
100%.
am I missing anything else for how to get onto your destiny path?
Yeah, the only thing that was a great summary. The only thing I would add is around the point where you said recognize and take the chance to pivot, is to assess and be open to understanding like there are lessons, and in certain situations, like when I gave the example of I felt like, oh my God, London didn't work out. It's a failure. Like, okay, what am I supposed to take from this?
Yeah.
Like, what am I supposed to learn? Like, what does this mean to me now? And I had to reprogram the meaning that, like, no, this doesn't mean that I'm a failure. It means that, okay, now I have to figure out like what is the next step I want to take, because I know that I don't want to go backwards, but I know that I want to live in Europe. So being open to that and know that there are lessons in sometimes situations that may seem like a tragedy or a setback.
Yes. And I love also, to add on to that, is to do the self work to realize what your limiting beliefs are so that it can set you on the path of really receiving what you want. Because I think part of this is self-sabotage if you don't believe you're worthy of the things that come to you.
Yes,
So
exactly.
is there anything that I didn't ask that you wanted to share?
Mm. Wow, you asked so many great questions. No, just the fact that I am super grateful that we connected, and that we are having this conversation. And yeah, this has been really, really just heartwarming. Like I said, I needed this, and I'm so glad that I had the chance to talk to you again today and giving me this space to share my story and to, yeah, spread our goodness into the world.
I feel the same way, and I'm going to ask you what you asked me. What would you tell your younger self?
Oh my God. Well, I shared this. Thank you. In that episode, you actually listened to it, and my friend like actually took me off guard, caught me off guard, but kind of spoke on this earlier. But I would tell my younger self that you are enough and to embrace your weakness.
Mm,
Because as I said, I've learned now um, that a lot of my limiting beliefs were stemming from the mother wound, not feeling that I was enough. I remember, wanting to look like somebody else because, yeah, just society and all of that, and not being good enough for my parents' expectations, all of that. And then realizing that there's so much beauty in actually our individual differences. It's actually what sets us apart. So
yeah.
I would tell my younger Chris, oh, Chung Un, my Korean name, that like, be patient, girl. You don't want to look like everybody else.
Yes.
And yeah, I was a painfully shy child, Laura. Like people don't believe me when they meet me today, but like my mom had to make friends for me. Kid you not, when I was in grade school, I swear. Uh, but I would tell that shy little girl who couldn't make friends that don't rush it. Don't worry that like your uniqueness, your shyness one day will blossom into, yeah, something beautiful that you'll embrace.
That is so beautiful. And what I shared with Chris before we got on here was that this whole episode and this whole our own platforms, PS Younger Self and Awaken and Align, is our own love language, our own love letter to our younger selves that we didn't
Mm,
see ourselves represented in media or in movies or music. And it's like ourselves telling our younger selves that we are worthy and we are holding space, people.
yes. And we need people, yeah, we need like, our good souls like this to continue to support each other and uplift each other, amplify voices. And so again, thank you for that, Laura.
Thank you so much, Chris. I will link all of our information and thank you so much. We'll have to have you back on. Bye.
Can't wait.